Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Hey guys, today is date August 27th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, we do try to watch our language on this podcast, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too graphic for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, where do we start? I know a lot has happened with two major stories, but we might as well interject some good news because this should have happened a long time ago. But finally, I guess the city of Uvalde decided to finally do something that we should have been seeing a long time ago.
Tonight, Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo is out.
All in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
With mounting pressure from parents, the board voted to fire the embattled chief who waited over an hour to storm a classroom and take down the gunman who killed 19 children and 2 teachers.
Our babies are dead.
The anger felt by families and students still palpable 3 months later.
I have messages for Pete Arredondo and all the law enforcement that were there that day. Turn in your badge and step down. You don't deserve to wear one.
Some victims' families emerging from the meeting feeling relief.
It feels good to finally see some kind of justice being done in Uvalde.
Javier Casares lost his 9-year-old daughter Jackie in the shooting.
The work's still not done. You know, we got more work to do.
Would you like an apology?
I would have liked to apology back then. Right now, no, it's too late.
Chief Arredondo refused to attend Wednesday's meeting. Just prior, his attorney sent the board a scathing 17-page statement calling him the fall guy and the process an unconstitutional public lynching, accusing the board of violating Arredondo's right to due process and calling for his reinstatement, writing, "None of his decisions or actions demonstrate a failure." That, despite an investigation by the Texas legislature, which found officers failed to prioritize saving the lives of innocent victims over their own safety. With Arredondo gone, parents are left to reconcile their grief with the memories of their children.
Because of the way she was a forgiving person, she would want us to forgive.
Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Well, there you go. Police chief has actually been fired, and it is a very somber that Arredondo is fired. Although, in my opinion, that's a lot more than just him should be fired. Really, the officers that were involved, again, I understand that officers have to follow a command structure, but waiting over an hour to breach a doorway while kids are being killed by one lone armed individual is no excuse. This is why I say the whole good guy with a gun thing doesn't really add up when you had a whole bunch of guys outside with a gun, quote unquote, good guys, decided that they're going to wait. So I don't, and then the thing that kills me that he tries to come out and say, well, he's the fall guy for all this. No, other heads should be rolling besides yours. But you were the police chief and commander on site. You pretty much gave the go ahead, whether it was breaching or not breaching or waiting. You were the guy to make that decision. Heavy is the head that lies the crown with command. So to sit there and say he's the fall guy and that all his actions were justified, how? Because it sounds like to me you're just trying to save your position just in case you want to go somewhere else and still be law enforcement, which usually happens in these situations. That officers, yeah, they may get terminated, but at the same time, they also may resign in the hopes of going somewhere else and just being a cop somewhere where nobody knows them. I'm not saying the same thing will happen for him, but who knows? I mean, he was fired. He wasn't exactly never allowed to be a law enforcement officer again. But he's not the only person that should be losing their jobs from this fiasco. But at least the parents can get some comfort that there will be some accountability in all this, even though there needs to be a lot more. But moving right along, guys, I keep telling y'all, no matter what happens at the job site, anytime you try to unionize, especially because every corporations and rich people hate unions. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but a good majority of them do. Even more so that it's happening everywhere, including at giant retail centers like Amazon. How many times have we heard the next story all too often that a person who is trying to unionize at an Amazon is fired? This comes from someone who was in Kentucky, was wanting to talk about unionization at Amazon, and then the thing about it is they fired him. Now, the reason why they fired him, and this is a 22-year-old person. That's the individual right there who was the organizer for the Louisville area Amazon that was trying to unionize it. Now, he was not only the lead organizer, but he was also basically the main guy of the union drive. Now, what they're trying to say is that the reason why he was fired was basically due to company violations, which I find amazing, because here's exactly how you know where you know you're doing something, when they have to find reasons. We saw it at Amazon, we see it at Starbucks. Anytime they send corporate comes down, it's like, oh, we're just here in case you have any questions, or if you need things facilitated, or if you need something done, or if you just want to talk to us. That's what we're here for. Let me tell y'all something from experience. Whenever in management, if you ever come across one of my podcasts, understand this. The only time management ever wants to talk to you is never good news. It never is. In my experience, whenever management wants to talk to you, it is never good news. Or when upper management wants to talk to you, it is never good news. I don't know why they think by trying to empathize with us, friends with us, things of that nature, that's going to make us feel good. Anybody that's worked on a job long enough knows no news is good news. But if management wants to talk to you, it is not going to end well in your favor. That's just the way it is. Even in Amazon knows that at the end of all this, they are going to be unionizing. There is, and quote me on this. August 27th of 2022. Quote me on this, that for the simple fact of the matter, it may take a while, may take a year, may take a couple of years, but Amazon is going to have a union. If enough of those workers come together, there will finally be a union. And when there's a union, it's gonna spread like wildfire. Because why? Unions work. I have stressed this multiple times on this podcast that unions do work. Without unions, you would not enjoy the benefits that you currently have at your job, because no corporation is going to give you PTO. No corporation was thinking about giving you a 40-hour work week. No corporation was thinking about giving you benefits. All of those things were earned by unions. So I say it again, if there's not a union at your location, form one. There's nothing against it. There's no law preventing you from talking about a union. And again, if they do retaliate against you, if the company that you're unionizing tries to retaliate against you, guess what? You can sue them, because it is illegal to retaliate against people who are trying to organize unions at workplaces. Despite, no matter what corporations and their public relations or think tanks that they bring on try to circumvent that. They try to bend that law as best they can without breaking it. Don't believe me? Amazon has done union busting plenty of times. So has many other corporations out there. So again, be vigilant and be wary, because they hate unions, because people in large numbers can hold corporations, rich folks accountable. Truly can. But the other big news that came out this week, or I should say it's been out for like the last week and a half. Ever heard the term quiet quitting? Quiet quitting. For all those that don't know what quiet quitting is, I'm going to let this video explain it first before I get my 2 thoughts on it.
The Don't Work movement, getting millions of hits on TikTok and Instagram, calling itself quiet quitting. The idea being, keep the job but don't work very hard at it and focus on getting fulfillment outside of work. A story about quiet quitting has been the #1 most read story all week long at the Wall Street Journal's website. The Journal also recently reported that some are exploiting remote work to hold multiple jobs, getting paid to be mediocre at 2 jobs instead of being good at 1. Axios has labeled all of this the new anti-work movement, a rebellion against rise and grind. A recent Gallup survey found that employee engagement in the United States is falling across all generations, but especially among younger Americans. Among those born after 1989, 54% call themselves not engaged, meaning they'll show up to do the minimum required, but not much else. Joining me now is Paige West, a digital creator who graduated from college in 2020, has been offering advice on quiet quitting on YouTube. Paige, thanks so much for being here. So you have an engineering degree. You left the corporate consulting world for the gig economy. How come?
Yeah, so I initially left because I wasn't finding fulfillment from my 9-to-5 job, and I saw that there was so much opportunity outside of the basic 9-to-5 corporate world that I really wanted to get into.
But were you mailing it in while someone was paying you? And if so, do you feel guilty about that?
No, so while I was in my 9-to-5 job, I still was working my 40 hours a week. I was still fulfilling my job duties. I was just taking away that feeling of stress I had after work by feeling like I needed to put in 1,000%, needed to join trainings and do as much as I possibly could to go up the corporate ladder. That just wasn't my end goal.
Do you worry that maybe a future employer, if the entrepreneurial activities that you're engaged in now don't pan out and later you need to be in someone's employ, they're going to take a look back at this chapter and they're going to say, wait a minute, Paige West, she was part of that whole quiet quitting trend. We don't want her.
I wouldn't think so, because at the end of the day, when I was still in my job, I was still doing what I needed to do. I'm certain if they called back my employer that I had when I was still in the corporate world, that they would happily say that I still did a great job, and everything I've done thus far and any references I could gain from my time building up my business and doing freelance opportunities would prove that as well.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. You're saying, hey, I gave them 100%. I was trying to plan my next move and I wanted to make sure that I was fulfilled outside the workforce. What I'm reading online, and I have watched a lot of your videos, I'm suspicious that you're typical if that's the case. I think a lot of the others, I'll go old school and say, are loafing on somebody else's dime. Am I wrong?
I think that there's two groups in that case, and I think they're not trying to loaf. Everyone is trying to do the work that's required of them. I think they're just trying to figure out what that fulfillment looks like outside of work, as well as they're not at the point where they're realizing that their burnout might not even be because they're overworked. It might be because they're misaligned in the job that they're in. And I think a lot of people will realize that. When I was quiet quitting, it was not for a very long time. I only did it for 3 months, although my plan was to do it for 9. But over time, I started realizing that I couldn't stick it out any longer, because it wasn't just that I was overworked and burnt out and, all the mental health struggles I was dealing with. It was actually because the job I was in was just not the right one for me. And I think many are going to realize that as well.
Okay, so quiet quitting, as they say, because I'm trying to understand this. So quiet quitting is basically doing the bare minimum to keep your job. Doing the bare minimum at your job, but not going over. I'm sorry, but correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that just basically doing your job? Because I don't understand the whole quiet quit. Well, you're not trying to go the extra mile. You're not putting in overtime. You're not working on weekends. You're not being available when the company or the business needs to be available. No, quiet quitting is pretty much just a light to shine on to show people that yes, people get tired. Number 1, people get tired. Number 2, people get burned out. Number 3, the exhaustion is real. If there's anything that this pandemic has shown us, if there's anything that with the emergence of jobs that used to be commuted to are now work from home, will tell you anything that quiet quitting is nothing more than extreme depictions of working to what you actually work to. You're basically working to what you agreed to. That's not quiet quitting. I always love people sit there and say, "Well, that's quiet quitting." No, it's not. Well, nobody works, nobody does 100%, 110% more. Nobody does overtime anymore. Nobody goes the extra mile. Where's the reward in that? See, a lot of people realize something. A lot of people have realized their worth in the workplace. A lot of people realize they'll work their jobs, But anything extra, if you have to train somebody, if you have to do the work of several individuals or more than one, if you have to do anything that's outside of your job description. Remember that big thing everybody used to sit there and say? Everybody used to say this all the time. That's not part of my job description. The thing about it is that joke became actual reality. If it's not my job description, why should I do it? I mean, don't get me wrong. If you work an 8 to 5, I'm like everybody else. At 5 o'clock, close the laptop, go on with my life. Because for a lot of companies, this whole thing of work-life balance is some real BS. There is no such thing as work-life balance. If a corporation could really have it their way, do you think they would even mention the words work-life balance? Of course not. They wouldn't mention the word work-life balance because it doesn't suit them. They want continuous employee output. Continuous. That's why call centers are 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's why you have a lot of, used to be a lot of stores. Walmart used to be 24/7. Of course, not anymore. But they always wanted that continuous employee output. So once you've had that employee output, it's eventually like a horse that's ran the Kentucky Derby. It's going to run out of gas eventually. And a lot of people are like, and the thing about it is, at the end of that road, there is no reward anymore. Imagine, putting in overtime, volunteering for multiple projects. Imagine that you're doing more than your fair share for the company that you work for. No promotions have come your way. No record, no awards, no recognition, no kudos, no nothing. Maybe a pizza party. You might get pizza thrown your way as a way of ways of management, which I always said that is the most degrading way to show your appreciation. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. Thank you for all the hard work you put in. Let me get you the most cheapest thing out there possible to show you that we care. So again, with quiet quitting, it's not quiet quitting. It's people realizing that, hey, people are realizing their worth. They're realizing their job. They're realizing their time. And they realize in this day and age that not everything is going to be tied to your job. Some of them rather go out there, work their jobs, go out and enjoy life, enjoy their weekends, give back their PTO, take their sick days. That's what this generation is understanding, that there is no longer a reward for working hard. Not really. There used to be the promotions. There used to be the bonuses. There used to be these things where we used to tell people all the time, if you work hard, it pays off. But it's hard to believe that in this day and age, because if you work hard, now it's expected. Not that it's welcomed or appreciated. It's going to be expected. That's always he always used to sit there and say, don't do too good of a job. They're going to always expect it out of you. And if you do too good of a job, then the person above you might be wondering, hey, is he getting from my job? But you know who they never look at? The person who does the bare minimum. Why? Because they do just enough to stay on the radar, but just enough to be relevant. But again, for the hard workers out there, the reason why the whole quiet quitting is in place is because there's no longer reward for effort. Companies out there have forgotten that you need to reward the effort of your workers instead of expecting the effort out of your workers. Just saying. Moving right along, guys, we do have some other stories to go to, especially since the Roe versus Wade has been overturned. There's now 3 states whose abortion laws will now go into effect, and unfortunately, Tennessee is one of them.
Idaho, Texas, and Tennessee triggering even tougher laws on abortion. Tennessee going from a ban after around 6 weeks to a near total ban beginning at conception.
It's a rare exception when the life of the mother is truly in jeopardy.
How does the law define serious risk and risk to the life of the mother? Is that laid out very carefully?
In this law, that is not. That determination is left up to a doctor.
But is it up to a doctor to look forward and, in their best estimation, end a pregnancy before it becomes dangerous for a mother?
It's really not. It has to be that the life of the mother is in danger.
The 2-page bill does not include the word exception. instead requiring doctors to prove a procedure was necessary.
You really don't know how to handle certain medical predicaments until a mistake is made or until some case law comes into being.
In Texas, except to save the life of the mother, it is now a felony to provide or attempt abortion after fertilization, with fines of at least $100,000. While in Idaho, a rare victory for the Biden administration. A judge saying the state cannot punish doctors for performing abortions to save the life of a woman in an emergency room setting.
This is just a last-ditch effort on the part of a pro-abortion administration to keep abortion legal in Idaho.
And late today, after a challenge by North Dakota's lone abortion clinic, a judge temporarily blocked the state's plan to outlaw abortions with few exceptions starting tomorrow. Bracing for the ban, the clinic moved across state lines.
People that are most impacted by trigger bans, are exactly the patients we've been serving. People who live in a rural area have difficulty getting to where the clinic is at. Black, Indigenous, people of color.
With Oklahoma's stricter law also taking effect Saturday, by the end of the week, it is estimated 1 in 3 women will live in a state where abortion is banned or severely restricted.
And that honestly says a lot. That yes, you pro-birth, pro-life people, especially in Tennessee, I'm not surprised. But they always hang on. But the one thing I want to take away from this, as we get to the next story, which is also involving abortion, they always sit there and say, "Well, we'll consider abortion if the mother's life is in danger." One of the exceptions, if the life of the mother is in danger, and the baby, if you have to come down and choose between one, yes, the exception to the mother's life is in danger is when they will go ahead and perform the abortion, unless you are a Republican side chick or mistress. Then you get ushered into the side of the doctor's office where nobody talks about. But I want us to talk about that for a second. Not the Republican side mistress, but that exception. That if the mother's life is in danger. So imagine that you are a mother who is expecting, but unfortunately you find out that your child has a fetal syndrome that it will not live past a week of being born. Imagine that you fit all the criteria to have that abortion, as painful and as emotional and as destructive in all aspects, both physically and mentally, but you need to do this to save your life because your child will not have a life. Imagine that you fit all the criteria to have an abortion, but still told that you need to carry the baby full term. Sounds crazy, right? Yeah, actually happened.
I am here with Miss Nancy Davis on the steps of the Capitol of the state of Louisiana because what the state legislatures and the state itself is making Miss Nancy Davis endure is inhumane. She said better than I think anybody could have said it after she was told that her baby would likely live only a matter of minutes, up to at most a week after she delivered it, that they could not terminate the pregnancy at the clinic here in Louisiana. And she said it profoundly. They're making me carry my baby just to bury my baby.
10 weeks into my pregnancy, I found out that my baby had a rare birth defect called a crania. The doctors told me that my baby would die shortly after birth. They told me that I should terminate the pregnancy because of the state of Louisiana's abortion ban. They could not perform the procedure. Basically, they said I had to carry my baby to bury my baby. They seemed confused about the law and afraid of what would happen to them if they performed a criminal abortion according to the law. Now I am preparing to go out of state for this procedure next week. I want you to imagine what it's been like to continue this pregnancy for another 6 weeks after this diagnosis. This is not fair to me, and it should not happen to any other woman.
People die or deeply harmed when legislators substitute their judgment for doctors. This week, we saw some legislators who voted for abortion restrictions in other states admit, Nancy, that they had made a mistake when they saw the unintended consequences of their laws. When they saw you, Nancy, they admitted that they made a mistake. Lawmakers have a responsibility to represent the people, and they do that by creating laws that are clear and protective. Louisiana legislators have failed in this regard. I know there is a lawsuit challenging Louisiana trigger bans, and we fully support that effort. Ms. Davis and her family and the supporters wish for a successful outcome there. But while that case makes its way through the court, we are calling on the governor and the Louisiana legislature to call a special session to address this public health catastrophe. We need the special session sooner rather than later. Governor, Speaker of the House, Senate President, come back from your August vacations and make sure that these vague laws are actually clear so that other women are spared the mental anguish, the mental torment that Miss Nancy Davis is having to endure. April 10th is the date that the Louisiana legislature will be back in session here at this Capitol. Imagine how many women may be affected before they come back into session.
So, long story short, the woman that you saw there, again, was told in Louisiana, which is one of the states that did have a trigger abortion law in effect. Her baby that she was carrying did have a rare birth defect, and was told that it may not survive post birth. However, they also sat there and said that they can't perform the abortion, even though she fits the exception under the Louisiana abortion law, to where now she has to go out of state to actually have the procedure done. But at the same time, if she does stay in Louisiana, she would basically be forced to give birth to a child that she would have to bury in just a matter of days. I'm sorry, that's beyond fracked up. At the same time, was Ben Crump, her attorney there, calling for Louisiana to have a special session to reinvestigate the trigger abortion law. But as many times we talk about abortion on this podcast, I cannot stress it enough. Women's lives are in danger. And the fact of the matter is that they are not given the priority and not being given the choice, that which the whole point of abortion. The whole point of abortion is making sure that we are preserving the choice, not making the choice for women and then giving them exceptions, like they have to cover them on a checkmark list before the actual abortion can be done. If you don't like abortion, cool, that's on you. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that preservation of choice is required and is needed, especially in situations like that, where you're following their exact guidelines and they're still telling you you have to carry you have to carry the baby, no matter the damage, to term. Which goes to show you how Republicans look at women, which, again, if you've ever seen The Handmaid's Tale, pretty much it. That's all I'm saying. Pretty much it. But moving right along, guys, again, I did want to revisit Biden as he did talk about his student debt relief plan. We did talk about it yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry, not yesterday. We did talk about it in the midweek review, to where we showed that, it'd be 10,000 if you 10,000 if you're without a Pell Grant, 20,000 if you did have it. Income payment based plans will be capped off at 5% of your monthly income. It's something. I will say this about Biden. It's something. He did fulfill his promise. A lot of people are like, he didn't fulfill his campaign promise. Yeah, he did. He sat there and said that he would look at $10,000 of student loan debt for each person. Now, I have stressed my views on this, that it's something. I still think he could have went way farther, because PPP loans are getting forgiven by the billions. As I said before, $793 billion have been doled out for the PPP loan, and only $742 billion of it has already been forgiven. The government forgave businesses. What do you think that money is going to be paid for? Us. And honestly, I'd rather be paying toward people getting out of student loan debt than trying to bail out a business that can bail out itself but wants to keep its money. But that being said, we did want to check out some reactions around the country regarding student loan debt. Some were happy, some were pissed, and some were exactly the conservative, misguided, misery loves company people that just got to say the same thing. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute.
Is overjoyed.
I did a happy dance. I was very, very excited.
After President Biden's announcement that'll knock her student loan debt down from $16,000 to $6,000. Welcome relief just a few years after she graduated from George Washington University.
This is a huge blessing for me. There's a weight that's lifted off of my shoulders.
But tonight, the president's executive action is fueling a fierce debate over fairness. The move means the government will erase $10,000 in federal student loans for those making less than $125,000 and $20,000 in student loan debt for lower income Pell Grant recipients.
My plan is responsible and fair. It focuses the benefit on middle class and working families.
The announcement praised by many progressive Democrats, though some wanted the president to go further, while several moderates are critical. Ohio Democrat Tim Ryan warning it sends the wrong message to the millions without a degree working just as hard to make ends meet. Republicans say it'll force many working class taxpayers who did not go to college to cover the costs of more affluent people who did.
This is grossly unfair, but it just gives you an insight into the priorities of the Democratic Party. They're once again looking out for the interests of wealthy, well-educated elites, largely clustered on our coasts.
A master plumber in Georgia, Gabriel Runyon, is outraged by the president's decision. He says he and his wife juggled multiple jobs so his wife could pay for college without a loan. What frustrates you most about this?
We worked hard so we wouldn't have to get loans. We didn't want to use the system. So why is it those who use the system get the easy way out?
Still unclear whether this will impact inflation, and the White House says it cannot predict the price tag, but one nonpartisan group says it could cost taxpayers $500 billion.
Okay, so let's depack this for a second. Okay, I've already sat there and said the president could have done more. He could have forgave the entire amount, because if you think about his track record, he's already forgiven student loan debt for disabled students. He's already forgiven student loan debt for those who are in public services, so nurses, teachers, things of that nature, who apply for that who apply for that loan. He's already forgiven loans for those that were named in lawsuits for for-profit colleges. ITT Tech being the most recently of them. He's forgiven the loans for those. So, on top of his plan yesterday, he has, to his benefit, has sat there and did keep his promise. Although $10,000 was a very low bar. I mean, you could easily do that. Although he has stressed heavily that he does not have the executive authority to forgive the entire student loan debt. I kind of argue against that because, number one, you have the ability to send $1 billion package to Ukraine. You have the PPP loan at the majority of its time, $793 billion. $42 billion has already been forgiven, which leaves somewhere between $51 to $52 billion unaccounted for. You're telling me that you can forgive those things, but you can't forgive $1.7 trillion. That's a third of the debt that we went into when we went into the wars with Iraq and Afghanistan. But you can't forget the debt. That's why I call BS on that. But it's something. That's why I stress so very much. It's something. It's like, if you really want to be honest, it's like Obamacare in a way. Obamacare isn't the same thing. It's something. Is it a perfect system? Of course not. Does it get a lot of people the help they need? Of course it does. Can it be fine-tuned? Of course it can. But it had to start somewhere. And that's the reason why I'm not knocking it as much. Although Biden could have done more. But of course, leave it to Republicans, the party that has done nothing this entire congressional session. The party of doing nothing and saying no is coming out and saying, well, that's a bad idea because that's just going to bail out. That's just going to send the wrong message. The message of what? Well, if you take out a loan and you don't want to pay it, you're going to expect to get bailed out. Oh, you mean like most businesses, most Republicans, rich people, and corporations have done? What do you think the PPP loan was? I say it all the time. What do you think the PPP loan was? I mean, in itself, the PPP loan was supposed to be for small or medium-sized businesses. How were corporations able to get millions from a program that was not designed for them? And how were those very same corporations and rich folks able to get their loans forgiven off a Republican-backed procedure that was put in place under Trump? You'll never hear any Republican. And I dare you to find one. You'll never hear any Republican talking about, well, if you took a PPP loan, you should be able to pay it back. You'll never hear that. But you know what you will hear? Anytime student loan debt wants to get resolved, you never should have took loan if you intend on paying it back. And I stress this all the time because this is a major conservative, Republican, misguided talking point. No one is arguing that no one is going to refuse to pay on student loans. Anybody who has student loans, myself included, has always understood that we got to pay it back. We've always understood we got to pay it back. There was no avoiding it. But listen to that man again. I don't mean to stereotype. But I'm so used to hearing white conservative people sit there and say the same thing. Oh, well, we didn't want to take a loan. I worked multiple jobs, so we didn't take loans. Think about that for a second. So that's not a sign of blue collar grit and determination. That is a sign that tells you off the bat that no one is looking at college tuition and wondering why it's going up every year. It's the same education, but goes up every year. No one is looking because they said they worked multiple jobs. They didn't want to go into the system. No one's looking at banks and going, how are banks able to get away with this type of lending on student loans at this APR and this interest rates on kids, 18-year-old and younger kids who are taking on these student loans because that's the only way to go to college? Because we were told a long time ago, in order to get a great job, we had to have a degree. We had to have training because don't get me wrong about trades, still go into trades. Trades should be advertised as much as college educations are. I will never argue that. But with that being said, nobody's looking at banks and going, how are they not regulated to ensure that the loans that they are putting out isn't going to lock said person up for years, not a single year, years. You can go on TikTok, you can go on Twitter, you can go on Instagram. You can go into those people that say they pay their debts. One guy sat there and said, at 18 years old, he got a student loan of $20,000 at 18 years old. He got his degree. He didn't finish paying off the student loan that he got at 18 until he was 45. At age 45, he finally paid off the student loan that he had gotten when he was 18. 45, 18. That's a huge effing gap. That's how long he was saying, that took him that long to pay off a single student loan plus interest. Does anybody really want to waste? Does anybody really want to waste nearly 20 plus years of your life paying off a single item that you got at 18 years old that's going to take you 2 decades and a little over that to pay it off? That's the problem. That's the big problem. The problem that's not being addressed, not with the banks, not with college tuition, not with the fact that some people who fit into that category of that plumber who have this mindset that either A, that you have to take out a loan that you're stuck with for 20 or 30 plus years, or B, you have to work multiple jobs just to match college tuition. Both the sides of that problem are not being addressed. And that was the reason why I said Biden could have done more. Not just forgiving student loan debt, but really looked at the way banks are handling student loans and putting them under requirements. It could have been handled it's a multi-headed problem that could have been handled several different ways. But again, it's something. However, my whole thing was, it's just the whole point of whenever I hear people say, well, people just don't want to pay their bills. They do. But they also want to see an end. It's just like your car note. It's just like your mortgage. Eventually, there's an end. Student loans are the only loans out there to where I promise to God, the only way you see the end is if you come up on a sum of money, win the lottery, or better yet, it outlives you. That is the only way that's the only way a student loan debt gets resolved. Either by extensive time and hard work, either that you come up on money or flat out, you basically just expire before your loan does. And that is the situation. And that's messed up. Really and truly. But speaking of things that are messed up, guys, of course, Donald Trump and his his so-called witch hunt, or I should say the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, where they simply were just exercising a search warrant, has come to light as the judge has released some documents, although redacted, but it's just interesting what they've come up with so far. Just saying.
News about the affidavit that led to the FBI search of former President Donald Trump's Florida Mar-a-Lago estate. The Department of Justice has finally released a redacted version of that 38-page affidavit revealing that the FBI found 25 documents marked top secret among 15 boxes of files Trump gave back to the National Archives earlier this year. For more on what we discovered today, let's bring in ABC News investigative reporter Catherine Falders, also former chief minority counsel at the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, Jeff Robbins. So, Catherine, what else did we learn within this affidavit that could impact this investigation into Trump and these classified documents he took from the White House?
So look, Kara, this is really laying out the timeline that led up to this August raid. We now know what was found in those original 15 boxes that took federal investigators so long to obtain, highly classified information. And we didn't quite know what was in these before. So 14 of those boxes, Kira, 14 of the 15 contained classified information, highly classified signals intelligence, potentially compromising human sources, to the point that investigators and this special agent on the FBI revealed that they believed that there was evidence of obstruction, that there was probable cause, that there was still documents there at Mar-a-Lago and in multiple locations. And they revealed that Mar-a-Lago was not secure. It didn't have a secure location at all where these documents could be accessed. And they weren't just in that one location. They had reason to believe that they were in other areas around the premises, Kara.
So Trump is now pushing back, of course, on the affidavit's release. Does he have any point to what he's saying here?
Well, look, he has called for it to be released originally. Now, of course, Trump is saying, and his allies and his spokespeople are pushing back on the redacted version of it. But the reality is that's redacted to protect the witnesses in this investigation and potentially in future investigations or other ongoing investigations. Now, look, if Trump wanted to, and his lawyers, if they wanted to be a party to this lawsuit in court, they could have been, Kira, but they did not join on to this lawsuit. They filed no motion. It was media organizations, including ABC and the Department of Justice. So Trump has said all of this publicly, but again, has made no case for this to be released in court.
And so, Jeff, this isn't just about the mishandling of classified documents. There are other crimes involved here. So what position does this put the former president in legally when you're talking about obstruction and also unlawful taking of presidential records?
Well, there's a 34-page affidavit full of evidence that the federal magistrate has found should not be disclosed because it consists of evidence that will or could jeopardize the investigation. I know that looking at this heavily redacted document, it feels a little bit like affidavitius interruptus because it's all blackened out. But that's exactly what is supposed to happen when the identity of witnesses or the information that they provided or the identity of future witnesses may be compromised. So there's a 34-page document. We know it has a ton of evidence that a federal judge has found could jeopardize the investigation if it were disclosed. I wouldn't be particularly happy from a legal point of view if I'm the former president right now, but I understand that his allies will be out there saying, well, look, if you hold this blackened out area up to the light, it looks as though Hunter Biden provided this information to the FBI. But from a legal point of view, he's exactly in the same position that he was in yesterday.
So the DOJ argued, Jeff, that a full release of the affidavit could reveal grand jury information, the direction of a highly sensitive national security investigation, all while putting potential witnesses at risk. Did it? And what could this mean now for the direction of this investigation?
So when it comes down to it, Trump just wanted to know who snitched on him. That's what it is. That is the entire reason why Trump, the failure in chief, wanted that to be made public is because he wanted to see who snitched on him. If I take a wild guess, look at your son-in-law. What's his name? Jared? Look at that dude. He's kind of been quiet. If anybody was going to be a snitch and roll on him, he'd be my first pick. But no, Trump finds himself in hot water. And again, them releasing the affidavit is the word I'm looking for. Them releasing it makes him look all the more guilty. And it's just like, shoot yourself in the foot, reload. But again, that's not surprising. So we will follow that story as it goes along. Last story I got, guys, before we get to our Feel Good News segment, I talked about the fact that not only are teachers going on strike everywhere, it seems Seattle is no different. As you can see, guys, a teacher strike in Seattle has already started, which delayed the start of the school year. In Washington, Seattle, again, it's the same thing. Teachers are going on strike due to unreasonable conditions, pay, overcrowding of classrooms, and things of that nature. This is not just one area. This is also in Seattle. Like it's also in various places. Like in Ohio, in various places. I just wonder the whole entire time, when are people going to wake up and realize that if teachers decide that they just simply don't want to teach, private and charter schools are going to become backed up. And for all those that want to be homeschooled, all those who always thought about homeschool, well, guess what? You're going to be playing homeschool, the real game, if you choose to do that. But I've always said it best, as short as sweet. If the Department of Education was funded the same way that the Pentagon gets a blank check because its budget increases every year, if the Department of Education got a blank check just like the Pentagon did, there'd be smarter people and fewer wars. If we honestly treated teachers like the rock stars that they are, give them the pay, give them the support, tax breaks, things of that nature that they need, you would see education improve as a whole. But again, it's almost like the quiet quitting that they talk about. Teachers are realizing that they're only going to work their job. Some teachers are realizing that they can't quiet quit. That's the thing about it. Educators realize they can't quiet quit their jobs. They care about the kids. They care about their impact. They care about the impression they make on them. But they also care for their own well-being, and that some teachers push themselves to the point of exhaustion just to make sure that the kids are going to get at somewhat a decent education. But again, as I sat there and said a week ago, since 2020, over 500,000 educators have left the teaching profession. It's almost as if they want to privatize everything. And I mean by them, I mean the Republicans. Keep in mind, this is the same tactic they did the U.S. Postal Service. They wanted to privatize that. You don't think they're going to try to privatize education? Again, guys, like I keep saying, the midterms are coming up. Please vote. I'm not telling you to vote Democrat or Republican. I know for myself, I can't see anybody being Republican unless you're an old, fat, white guy. That's the only people that party's for. Everybody else might as well be a smokescreen. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to our feel-good segment because usually don't have the Frack guy here. We do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose on faith humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're off. But if you're not off, may your shift be quick. But there's a couple of stories I do want to go over to give you some good vibrations. And here's for story number 1. Wow, that almost sounded like Casey Kasem for a second.
Finally tonight, America Strong, one of the nation's oldest farmers, gives us all a lesson in longevity.
Earl Mallinger has a lot to be thankful for. Just last week, he celebrated 105 years on this earth, still tending to his 1,000-acre farm in Oslo, Minnesota. He's one of the oldest working farmers in the country.
There's the kernel.
Growing sugar beets, wheat, and soybeans.
I like to be out with people and look at the crops. Well, I call myself a windshield farmer now.
These days, he hires others to do the field work, but he still makes all the decisions for his farm. He's seen many advances in farming over the decades, from using hand tools to modern machinery today. In fact, he credits farming with helping with his longevity.
Farming is a very good business to be in. It's exercise, fresh air, and you keep active.
One of his secrets to living a long life?
Keep moving. Once you quit moving, you go downhill pretty fast.
He started golfing at 75 and played until just a few years ago. And for more than 30 years now, every Tuesday, you can find him here at a group for widows and widowers. Mallinger said he feels blessed to have spent his life farming and enjoying the fruits of all his labor, which now include his large extended family of 60 great-grands and grandchildren, sharing these words of advice today.
Stay humble, and with the help of God, you don't have to worry. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Known for.
Yeah, I love that. Like I said, I always love listening to the older generations. I know sometimes they may not always get it right, but at the same time, they got perspective of life. Don't sweat the small stuff, and everything will take care of itself. Next one I got, guys, is a group of kids who are learning also the basics of farming and hopefully passing it on to the next generation. Check it out.
On Reed's Organic Farm in New Jersey, they're harvesting food.
Good, right?
While growing young minds.
Beautiful.
These teens live in Atlantic City, which is a mere 20 minutes away, yet feels like another world.
Why do you love it so much?
Because it's quiet. 78 serene acres that are home to a summer program through the Boys and Girls Club of Atlantic City.
Hold the branch with one hand.
The kids are learning what it takes to grow and harvest a wide range of fruits and veggies.
You have to have the muscles to pull the stuff out.
Do you have the muscles?
Yeah.
Here, they're united with nature, even the pigs in the farm's animal sanctuary.
They can come here and they can learn how we do things on a farm, but it's so important that they know that these are things that they can take home with them and share with their families.
In fact, some of the food they harvest ends up at the Boys and Girls Club.
Why are these so special?
Because they're organic.
A lesson in nutrition in a place deemed a food desert. Atlantic City has gone 15 years without a fully operated grocery store. For Amir Simmons Robinson, the 8-week program is having an impact. Just ask Mom.
I see a huge difference in his attitude, his behavior. He's a lot more patient.
And for Cookie Till, the farm's co-founder, that is food for the soul.
When you see it have an impact on them, how does that impact you?
It just makes my heart sing. It just means that change is possible.
Planting seeds in more ways than one. Joe.
And imagine, teach the younger generation, possibilities are endless. And I can go on the whole thing about food deserts because, yes, food deserts are definitely a thing. And even more so, like I said, the kids are learning not just agriculture, but just actually learning more about themselves. but it always helps if you invest in the younger generation. But that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. Thank you for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do that, here's some shameless plugging like I always want to do. Shout out to my buddy Yvonne, BigVZA on all socials. Yvonne Westwood on Facebook. You can definitely check him out, and on TikTok as well with his What is VZ Thinking things. He is definitely an original character, but I love him. But definitely check him out. BigVZA on all socials. Yvonne Westwood on Facebook. As for yours truly, guys, you can find me on all socials with the handle BlackFox447. Definitely like and follow me there. I usually post everything that I watch and review, and also some gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I'm all about pushing positivity, pushing to be kinder because Lord knows we need it. I'm not asking you to go out there and just be overall good Samaritans, but just be decent. We are going through a lot. And again, everybody's going through their own personal battle. You don't know what they may be going through. So definitely check up on your people, check up on your loved ones. You may be doing a lot more than just saying hi. At the times, you may actually be saving a life in the process and may not know it. So again, it takes zero energy to be nice. It takes 100% to be a dick. So don't be a dick. With that being said, guys, I know you see the ticker at the bottom, but let me make that just a little bit bigger for y'all to see that. Copy and paste that into your browser will take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack got here, get bitten, of course, y'all for this podcast. Definitely like, share, subscribe, tell me about it. Also about this podcast, tell me what you like, tell me what you didn't like, tell me if you agreed or disagreed with all that we talked about here. I want to continue the conversation. Aside from that, guys, again, please be careful out there in the world because we are still in a pandemic. We still have corona. We have monkeypox. We have its multiple Decepticons out there. So if you're going to be in an area that has a lot of traffic, please wear a mask. Please protect yourselves at all times because when you protect yourself, you protect others. And we need a lot of that right now. The last thing I'll say about how the Frack got here, guys, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information and allow you to make up your own mind, but we provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right our wrongs by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black 4-star Army general. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up but your paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this.